Right, to Brad Barr, my 2003 school captain and the Old Boys Committee, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. It is an absolute honour and a real privilege for me to be speaking here tonight. I do have to say though, that the choice of speaker tonight is pretty lazy work from the committee. 3 years ago you had an Olympic gold medalist in Ralph Duval. 2 years ago you had probably the best young comedian in the country in Nazim Hussain. And last year you had business heavyweight Lindsay Fox. And this year, ladies and gentlemen, you got a suit salesman. I think they just, pretty good suit. I think they just put the old queue in the rack for 2018 after Lindsay. Oh well, we'll just chalk it up to a good Melbourne High life lesson. Can't have the sweet without the sour. I also must admit that approaching a Melbourne High School lectern brings me a fair amount of anxiety. I was the school vice captain in 2003 and Brad Barr was the captain as mentioned. And I actually had a pretty tough time with it. I remember my first real test as vice captain was to thank the guest speaker at the first assembly of the school year, which is actually a pretty simple job. You thank the speaker, you throw in a few lines about how thought-provoking or inspiring the speech was, you shake his hand and you hand him a small gift, which was generally a pen set or a letter opener. Pretty basic. After seeing Brad welcome the speaker so eloquently and calmly, well, this is pretty straightforward. So when it comes to my job, I think I might just wing it. Except as I approached the lectern, something similar to this lectern, I completely went to pieces. I totally forgot the speaker's name. And it went something along the lines of, I'd like to thank the speaker on the speech to us blokes. And as a small token of our appreciation, I'd like to hand him this small gift. I shook his hand, sat down, shattered. However, I did take two things away from that harrowing experience. One, the Melbourne High School letter opener that I should have handed the speaker. And secondly, to always be prepared when standing and talking in front of a crowd. So hence this ridiculous oversized folder that has my speech in it. I arrived at Melbourne High in 2000. My older brother had started at the school 2 years earlier and he loved it. What drew me to Melbourne High were the friends that he made there. They were from different backgrounds and came from all over Melbourne. And I wanted to have friends just like that. Prior to Melbourne High, I attended an inner-city private school where cultural diversity was basically defined by whether you had a beach house at Sorrento or you had one at Portsea. So being thrown into an all-boys school where being clever gained the most respect as opposed to how good you were on a footy field or how well you rode a boat was a really big change. And it was a change that I was really happy to make. I distinctly remember one student in particular in our year level, Zihong Chen, who represented Australia in the Maths Olympiad. He was the only student who was allowed to wear a non-Melbourne High School blazer. He was allowed to wear his Maths Olympics blazer. And he was a legend of our school. He was also the school pianist in our final year. During one particular assembly, after Zihong finished playing the school song, the student body spontaneously launched into a Zihong chant. Zihong, Zihong, Zihong. At what other school in this country would 700 teenage males ferociously chant the name of a 5'7" maths champion? That is a uniquely Melbourne High thing, and I love it. I had a great time at school, and I was lucky enough to make a great group of friends, half of which are sitting over there. Thanks for turning up. We called ourselves the bench crew. We called ourselves that because we religiously spent our recesses and lunches at the bench that sits halfway up the hill to the right of the stairway to the main entrance to the school. This was an excellent choice of lunch spot strategically because you had a great view of the oval should there be a cricket match or a footy match. And you're also in striking distance of the canteen should you need an extra dim sim after a meat pie. Given the location of the bench being halfway up the hill, it also gave rise to a daily ritual called the bum drag. The bum drag was the seamless act of two of your mates abruptly grabbing you by the ankles, dragging you off the bench and all the way down to the bottom of the hill just before the road. Extra points were awarded if you were dragged the entire distance down the hill to the road, or if you were unlucky enough to be midway through a sausage roll. If you were fortunate enough, you might manage to free 1 foot from the savage grass and place that foot underneath. You'd have to sort of ski to a full impact on the back or the backside. The most trying times during the winter months and having to sit through the final 2 classes, soaked through and smelling of that bizarre wet dog blazer smell. But let it be known that the bum drag did not discriminate. Even our mate Matthew Hamilton-Hode, the 6'3" hulking centre-half forward, did not escape the odd drag down a famous hill. Another favoured pastime of ours, which to be honest I still feel pretty bad about, was a game we played our Year 12 form teacher, who was the head of French at the time. As our English was pretty scratchy, the game involved the form captain trying to cram as many swear words into the morning bulletin as possible. If he managed to get to 10, we let out a bingo in our best, pretty bad, in our best French accents. But the best of times we probably had, at least for me anyway, during mass singing. I loved mass singing. And even though I really liked it when as a group you'd really nail a song, the temptation to sing an obnoxious, out-of-tune note was often too much to pass up. Of course, the stakes were always high, because lurking in the shadows of Memorial Hall, Saki Ganella was never far away. And the dreaded "you" when you've been caught out still sends shivers down my spine. I'm actually not too sure there are too many old boys from the past 50 years or so that wouldn't have a story or two about the great Saki Ganella. I managed to do well enough at school to study commerce at Melbourne Uni, but unlike school, I never really got involved, for whatever reason. My surfing improved a lot, I played a lot of online poker, and I generally had a good time, but I was a poor student. By the end of my degree, I thought I should knuckle down a bit, and I did manage to achieve some good results, but it was all too little too late. I had a rude awakening in the sense that I found myself at the end of my studies, having taken 6 years to complete a 3-year degree. I had a pretty good time. With no real work opportunities and a decent HECS debt. So I thought to myself that if nobody would give me a job, I better go out and make one up for myself. My first crackpot idea was affectionately called the pet detector. The idea was essentially a small device that you could place on the collar of your pet, and should that pet get lost, you could jump online and track its whereabouts. Unfortunately, our proof of concept was the size of an iPhone and far too cumbersome. This is fine if you're tracking a golden retriever or a Malamute, but nothing kills a business idea quicker than the sight of a Jack Russell dragging its head on the ground under the weight of a device that's meant to keep it safe. Idea number 2 was talking to Year 12 students about how to successfully navigate university, a subject on which I felt I was somewhat of an authority. We gained a bit of traction and piloted the program at a number of schools, but nobody actually wanted to pay us for these talks, so that one ended pretty quickly. Idea number 3 was distributing a product out of the US that was a new invention, a product that was a hybrid of a chopstick and a fork, a chalk. Genius. Turns out that the Australian market, with our great access to Asian food, doesn't need training wheels, chopsticks when it comes to eating. So we were basically laughed at every meeting we went into. Then came selling anti-bears in Indian hotels. I got tons of this. I was basically by for 6 weeks peddling pillows and mattress protectors. Once again, the products didn't gain much momentum, But I did have to have myself some suits made as I was sweating through the one suit that I brought with me. The clothes themselves were terrible, but I absolutely loved the process of being measured up for a suit, choosing a cloth, and having a chat with the old Indian gentleman in his shop. And it was after that brief experience that I thought to myself, maybe this concept might work back home. And when I did finally come back home, after a few more weeks trying to sell useless bed-bug products, my adventure into the world of tailored suiting began. And at first we made awful suits. They never fit properly, and I probably ruined a handful of weddings because the groom looked like he borrowed his dad's suit. Our service was terrible, and everybody thought that I was wasting my time. Me as well. Those early days were also pretty embarrassing for me personally. Before we had showrooms, I used to drive around to our clients' homes or offices to deliver suits or measure them up. And I'd do that in my 1989 Nissan Pintara that I got off a friend in exchange for a surfboard. The windscreen wipers didn't work, and I had to duct tape the fabric roof so that it wouldn't cave in. The worst days were when it would rain, and I had to lean out of the window and wipe the windscreen to avoid oncoming traffic. I was trying to make sure that the rain didn't unstick the duct tape and risk the whole roof falling in on me. It was like some weird driving survival dance. When I was making a delivery to Toorak or Kew or one of those suburbs, I'd park around the corner in the hope that nobody would see me haul their suit out of my car that looked like it belonged in tip. But I persevered because I believed in the service, and slowly but surely we kept improving. In 2011, we moved into an office in the Docklands that we shared with a tech startup business. That was what we thought at the time. It was actually pretty funny because every time a client would peer their head into the office, I would be immediately greeted with the scene of 20 or so Colombian and Chinese computer programmers, headphones on, locked in. Not your typical English tailoring shop scene. I'd quickly usher the client into the boardroom at the back of the office and then wheel in the rack of suits that I kept in the store. Super efficient. Yet amazingly, we kept growing, and in 2012 we moved into a tiny space in the city, spending a couple of years there before finally moving to our current showroom in Hartley Lane in 2014. It was also about this time that we decided to move the core of our construction from Thailand. My first trip over there, my first trip to China was crossing the country, visiting different facilities, all different shapes and sizes. And I really mean different shapes and sizes. I met with one gentleman, he's home outside of Shanghai, whose whole range was a pile of suits in his kitchen. And as he was rifling through them to show me all the different designs, he also wanted to know if I was interested in buying cooling units that he had next door in his living room. On the other side of the spectrum, I visited a factory that constructs over 10,000 suits a day with over 2,000 staff on the factory floor, which was absolutely mind-blowing for somebody like me. Dealing with China has been an incredible experience. It's inspiring and nauseating all at once. At one moment, you're over the moon with the flexibility in production. The next, you're facing business ruin because they decided to make all your suits an inch slimmer in the sleeve just before spring carnival and nobody can fit their wrist through the cuff. It's an exciting thing to experience such energy and opportunity over there, and despite having tested suit construction in Italy, the UK and Portugal, we simply can't beat China when it comes to quality of construction and precision. You just have to make sure that you find the right partner. Since then, we've brought on board tailors and designers and menswear fanatics. We've sharpened up our processes and we've designed lovely showrooms where people can relax and have a good time. We've built a really great team and we're now in a strong position as one of the leading made-to-measure tailors in the country. As I said, we have showrooms in Melbourne and Sydney and have plans to expand into other states and internationally. We're also looking at other opportunities in our industry, given the learnings over the past 7 years or so. It's been a lot of hard work, but I'm proud of what we've been able to achieve. And in my opinion, the key to our growth has been in the age-old art of customer service. In a time where everything is exceptionally transactional, we've etched out a little business that is based on old world service, relationships, which is something to me that seems to be easily forgotten. And that idea of great relationships is key to me personally. Since last year, after being asked by Brad to speak here tonight, I've really struggled to come up with something to say. And without sounding too self-deprecating, my story isn't really that interesting or unique. Sure, I've got a few battle stories, but that would be the case with so many of us here. And in the context of Melbourne High, there are that many great professionals, thinkers, musicians, artists, social workers, sportsmen, travellers, that would all have great stories to tell. And when it comes to business, well, there's not much of a chance I can trump the speaker from last year. So I reflected on the past 12 months of my life and on the most important things. Sadly, late last year, the mother of my fiancée, Ali, who's here tonight, passed away after a long and brave battle with cancer. She was an extraordinary woman. Her funeral was held at a church seated 350 and it was packed. Her wake, whilst obviously a very sad moment, was a celebration of her life. The eulogists at her funeral all spoke about her marvellous personality and the great relationships that they had with her. At the wake, everyone spoke of the wonderful times that they shared with Susie and how much fun she was to be around. Yet interestingly, nobody spoke about her work. And that's not to say that she wasn't a success in her career. Suzanne was a biochemist, a real estate agent, and then an employment consultant. She lived a life that was as good as I've ever seen, and it seemed that her life well lived was not based on professional achievements, but rather based on the relationships and good times that she had with her family, her wonderful partner, and her friends. There's no way I'm going to win a gold medal like Ralph DeBell, although I would like to take part in that curling, that winter sport with the furious grooming. I don't have the talent like Nazim Hussain, and there's very little chance I'm going to have a few $1 billion in the bank like Lindsay Fox. But what the four of us share, just like most of us here, are those great relationships that were formed during our time at the Castle on the Hill and continue to be formed based on the connection to this great school. And it's those relationships that make my life rich. I'm proud to be an old boy because of that. And again, I'm very proud to be talking to you here tonight. It's been an honour, and it will be a privilege to sell you all a new tailored suit.